Venture X card from Capital One gives you premium travel benefits, perfect for seeing Taylor Swift The Eras Tour. Presented by Capital One. Oh, I do love her. Earn 5 times miles on flights and 10 times miles on hotels through Capital One Travel.
Enjoy your stay in Suite 13.
Whoa, 13? That's Taylor's lucky number. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
That new doctor is drop dead gorgeous.
Please, he's just another RV League educated surgeon with good hair.
No, he's different.
Nurses, we got a Class C motorhome with a detached driver's side mirror. Meet me in the OR. Stat.
Right away, doctor.
No, she's on break. I'll handle this one.
Oh, you conniving little...
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 105 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Billy Howerdel, I want to put a quick plug in for the Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass on Patreon. If the Mistress Carrie podcast, Cocktails in the War Room, and MistressCarrie.com, and of course, the Mistress Carrie radio shows isn't enough of me, then get yourself a Backstage Pass on Patreon. You can submit podcast questions, get exclusive photos and blogs, travel updates, behind-the-scenes info, monthly exclusive live streams, and access to a ton of free concert ticket giveaways. Click the Patreon link on MistressCarrie.com or go straight to Patreon.com/MistressCarrie. I have been a fan of Billy Howerdel's music for a long time. Billy's a member of A Perfect Circle and of Ashes Divide, and I've spoken to him a few times on my radio show. But with his new album coming out on Friday called What Normal Was, this is the first time the project is self-titled. Billy and I sat down and talked about his musical journey, his upbringing in New Jersey, and his pilgrimage, like so many musicians, to Los Angeles, going from being a roadie and guitar tech to being in his own band, his songwriting process and inspiration, growing up in a military veteran family, the influence of artists like Jerry Cantrell and Maynard James Keenan on his music, and his upcoming tour. You can see Billy Howerdel at the Brighton Music Hall in Boston on July 5th. And if you want to see all of his tour dates, click the link for his website in the show notes of this podcast. Billy is such an interesting and creative guy, and they sent me in advance of the new album, and oh, is it good. What Normal Was comes out this Friday, June 10th. So, allow me to introduce you to Billy Howerdel.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes. Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hello, Billy.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We've met before with A Perfect Circle and with Ashes Divide, but this is the first time that
I remember very well.
This is a big deal for you. This is all you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of Ashes 2.0, if you want to look at it that way, and it was going to be called Ashes Divide as of a few months ago, and the switch came, and there's many things that come with it, and really learning what it is to rebrand and how hard that is, even when it's your name. It definitely takes some, some explaining.
For anybody that doesn't recognize the name Billy Howerdel, they would know the music from Ashes Divide and also know you from A Perfect Circle. And you've got your new album coming out called What Normal Was, and it's coming out in just a few days, like June 10th. It's right around the corner. We're getting there.
Yeah. Exciting. Nerve-wracking and exciting for all the things we're doing, getting ready for, tour and release and music videos and all that stuff. So
I've been talking to a lot of artists, obviously, through COVID and kind of through the lockdown. And now that tours are starting to come back out, which you're going to be in Boston at the Brighton Music Hall on July 5th, tell me how that affected the creativity of this album, the lockdown. Where did you write and record the record?
I really recorded it starting. I was always, softly moving into the recording process, as I always do. The songs are like in an incubator and sit in a, bank account of song files for a while. Come August of 2019, I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on this, like really focus on it. And got to work. My friend Danny Lohner and I got in the studio and just made the record, and then kind of finished it by the winter of 2020. So the plan was to release it in May of 2020. So I was starting to mix in early March, and what happened there. And then as we started to mix, said, okay, we're going to put a pin in this and see what's happening. And then kind of picked it up over the next summer and just kind of slowly started mixing them with this guy, Matty Green, who mixed it remotely. He's actually just down the street. He's in LA, but we just did it remotely. I listened in real time at full fidelity, and we did it that way. So it was an interesting thing. The creative process wasn't really done during COVID, but certainly the mixing part, which gave me a little extra time to, kind of fine tune it the way I needed to.
You said something really interesting, and I ask a lot of songwriters this question. So I kind of know the answer already because you just told me, but tell me about your songwriting process. Is it a riff? Is it a melody? Is it a lyric? And then what do you do when these ideas come to you? Do you put them in a notebook? Do you sing them into your phone? Because I talk to all these different artists, and they kind of describe it as like having a net and just trying to catch the ideas and being able to hold on to them until you can do something with them.
It's always a little different, but I find more and more, I have an upright piano in my living room, which I got, a few years back. And that's really been nice because you just walk past it and throw something down. I have a studio too, but then you got to be in the studio. And for me, I do find like things have to be organized in a certain way. I start a file. Okay, let's name it. By the time it's like trying to be intimate. Too many ritual preparations go in, and then the moment's lost. I find that's the same with music. And like having having an upright in the living room is kind of the key to throwing things down when I need to. But I think one of the keys for me is like not overdoing it too. Like not trying to write something new all the time. Although I write little pieces of things often, but not like a whole song. So, put them into, I said before, like put them into a little bank account, have a lot of ideas, good luck remembering what they are. Sometimes they go missing for years, and then listen back to them and then be surprised. Sometimes you can collaborate with yourself because you forgot all about doing something. And I think that's like the best part, when I find something I wrote years ago and kind of remember it, but certainly wasn't thinking about looking for it. And then you kind of jump into it almost like a collaborator.
I am such a person that's fascinated by the craft of songwriting and people that have this innate musical ability, because I have neither. My illustrious clarinet career in the marching band in high school was short-lived at best. But on the liner notes of this new record, you're kind of playing everything. Is there an instrument you don't play?
I don't play any of them particularly great. No, there's plenty of things I don't play. I did buy a violin during COVID though. I went on Amazon and made a COVID purchase. It was like a $50 violin. And, my hands are too big for it. I guess that's the excuse I'm using.
I've joked on this show before that if you're a parent, there's two instruments that you hope your kid doesn't want to learn how to play: the violin and the drums.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just painful.
Yeah, I know, but now we have electronic, right? I actually bought a drum kit for my kids some years back, and they weren't interested. They seemed to be interested. And then when it was in here in my studio, they'd never came to play it. So it became my drum kit. And that's the one I did the record with. And, I did the whole record here at my studio. We didn't go outside for anything. And it definitely goes to show that people have complimented the drums on this record. And I go, well, it's not a total starter kit, but it's like $1,000 drum kit, which in the world of professional drums is not a huge expense.
Yeah, Neil Peart wasn't buying a drum set for $1,000.
No, no. I mean, any kit that we take on the road, like the drummer that I'm taking out, this kid Grayson DeCrutman, is just having a new kit made, and I guarantee you, it's 3 to 4 to 5 times that. So, yeah. But you can. I do like bending, lesser instruments to my will, and I think a lot of people do. I think that's even though he's somewhat of a more contemporary artist, I think Jack White is just amazing for that. It seems like the guitar doesn't need to be completely in tune. He will make it work. And that danger and that uncertainty is something that makes it human and makes it really cool. And there's plenty of, I don't want to talk anybody out of my record too far, but there's so many mistakes I left in the record that for me, I hear them. I don't know if you would, but I think they just add texture and they add a human element that, I think is important for engagement, as long as they're the right kind of mistakes, happy accidents.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I had this really fascinating conversation with Miles Kennedy, and we were talking about technology allowing rock musicians to take all the personality and those happy accidents out of the music and therefore remove a little bit of the soul. And because your new record, there's so much electronics in it, I'm so happy to hear you say that you kind of left those imperfections in there, because it would have been very easy for you to remove them. Yeah. I mean, if so Danny Lohner is going to come on. Danny Lohner was in Nine Inch Nails when I worked for Nine Inch Nails back in, Downward Spiral and the Fragility tour. He's going to play guitar on this upcoming tour. And he helped me with the record, but he didn't play the guitar. So now I'm showing him how to play it. He's like, oh my God. And I'm playing the tracks, sending him the stems or the individual tracks from the record. He's like, dude, you left this in the record? It is shockingly bad. But sometimes it's like a first take. A lot of times for me, it is recording a first take idea just to get it down so you don't lose the moment. Move on and keep working. I will tweak in Logic on my, my computer over and over for 10 hours, but I will only take 3 minutes to track something one time. I'll kind of just go and try and make it right. It's like, that's something that live, then it can become something a little more, because then you're kind of fine tuning and honing, and there's more power that comes from it. And I like that part of live versus recorded music. I like to, have something a little bit more fragile on the record and just come out with more, testosterone live. You alluded to it a little bit. For anybody that doesn't know your history and your backstory, you went from being behind the scenes as a tech to ending up on the stage yourself. There have been many times that the guitar tech or, one of the roadies has saved the day stepping in for somebody like James Hetfield after a pyro incident. You're the first person I think that I've had on the show that's kind of, I've interviewed techs and obviously musicians, but that's not exactly the most normal way to get to the point you're at now, is to be a guitar tech for, didn't you work for Fishbone?
Yeah.
Who else did you work for?
Got started. I'll give you the whole rundown.
Hit me with it.
It'll be quick. Okay. The Throbs was the very first band. You never heard that band, right?
No.
They were, deep cut. Late 80s, early 90s, wanted to be Guns N' Roses Part 2 and Black Crowes, and it was, I don't know if they were wanting to be, but that was definitely what it felt like. They were so wild they got dropped. They were too crazy. Then went right on to Fishbone, like 6 months later or less. And that's where I stayed for 3 years. And that's a lot of the relationships I made in the music industry, especially in the beginning. And Fishbone was in this perfect prime position which unfortunately they never really took off, but a lot of the bands opening for them did. You know, the Mighty Bosstones opened for them, another Boston band, right?
Yep.
Come on. Stone Temple Pilots, Tool. There's just so many big bands that went on to create success, and they didn't. But they were the most amazing live bands. So I met a lot of people, including Maynard and all the Tool guys, and that's where that relationship started. But they just were really well respected. So in the early 90s in LA, the Jane's Addiction was, you know, the really hot ticket at the time, Rage Against the Machine. And I don't know, there's just such a cool music scene coming out of the hair metal scene and into that early 90s scene. And so from there, from Fishbone, I went to Faith No More, I think, and Smashing Pumpkins, then Nine Inch Nails, David Bowie, and then worked in the studio with Guns N' Roses on that Chinese Democracy record for like 2.5 years before I had to go, and I had to leave my day job to go try music, basically, and started Perfect Circle. And like, you know, I really started the foundations of Perfect Circle early, but just like when it became like a project really with Maynard and I, it was like 98.
You were born on the East Coast though, right? You're a Jersey guy?
Yeah. No accent? You can't tell? Come on. You can if I start drinking and I'm with my friends. I just got a voicemail from a kid I grew up with. And I'm like, oh my God, man, I guess I sounded like that too.
People ask me about my Boston accent and they're like, oh, you don't really sound like you're from Boston. I'm like, get me drunk and piss me off and you're going to hear it.
Exactly. Yeah, give me a little road rage. And
you motherfucker! It comes right out.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have any. You and I lost it. We got watered down.
Broadcasting school did it for me.
Yeah.
You know, just trying to learn how to pronounce R's. It's very difficult.
I think it's me overcompensating for the fact that I just barely graduated high school and that I can't spell anything. So I probably, you know, I think this is therapy chair time right now.
It seriously is. It always ends up a therapy session on this show.
Yeah.
It totally happens.
I never thought of it that way. That's me overcompensating by trying to pronunciate things, or pronounce things.
So when did you go from
even better?
When did you go from the East Coast to the West Coast? Like high school era? When did you make that famed ride to LA?
Oh man, the bus ride was with the Throbs, that first band I toured with, and 91, I think. That's when it really all started for me. Before that, I graduated high school and then went to work for New Jersey and New York bands and corporate events, but mostly in lighting. And then got a touring gig, realized there was something, the position of a guitar tech came to my attention. And then I was like, well, I just started playing guitar. That sounds good. I can never leave the instrument I love and, still work for someone that takes care of theirs. So got to LA, woke up on a tour bus, literally in front of the Whiskey on Sunset, and did load in. My tour manager was this guy, Richard Cole, who tour managed Led Zeppelin and, many bands back in the day.
A few bands we may have heard of.
Oh yeah. And he was already like an old school guy then. And so he was like, all right, we're going up, come with me. He like grabbed me by the shoulder and we're going to have lunch. Takes me up to the Rainbow, which is, like 2 blocks up the street. And Lemmy is the freaking door guy. And we meet John Entwistle for lunch. And there was some other big musician. And now at this point, it's so funny when you think about time compressing. Right now, if you said, oh, this is a band from 20 years ago, well, I don't know, maybe because I'm a little older, but I go, okay, that's a while ago, but that's not ancient history. Things are still in color. For me, in 1990, 20 years ago, that's like...
the 70s.
Dude, it's the 70s. It was a different world. Things changed quicker then for all you youngsters. Like things don't change as quick now. They do in ways, but not like... I don't know. You'd have to help me explain that. But to see, like, to basically be with the guy that was intimately out with Led Zeppelin and hearing all these stories and these guys shooting the shit about everything going on that went back in the day and reminiscing about it. I was just so blown away. Like I was just, a 19-year-old kid landing or 20-year-old kid landing in LA. At the most LA place to be.
Growing up, were you exposed to music from your parents? Were they musical? And how supportive were they when you're like, I'm getting on a tour bus with the Throbs?
Yeah. Well, Dad, no. Dad's like, yeah. When are you going to get a job? You know, my dad was never, he was like, do something with your hands that no one can take away from you. That's the advice. And don't go to college. My dad was a not college guy. Not don't go to college at all means, but he's like, I'll do the math. He just laid out a piece of paper. He goes, you'll go to college and you'll owe this much money, and your peers will go to college and make this money, and they'll make more eventually, but you'll be making more. And if you put it away, and
people are having that argument right now. Your dad was ahead of his time.
Yeah. And he's like, you'll learn a craft that if you keep excelling at it, then you're going to do well. You just find what you love and you'll do it. So it was good advice. And, probably because, like I told you before, I barely got through high school. I had a great time in high school, but I was probably undiagnosed dyslexic and just can't spell, never read a book in my life.
It seems a lot of people that work in the music business were just bored. Above all else, we were there, but we were just bored.
Yeah. I really was passionate about it, though. I loved, going to a show and all the excitement of people saving up money to go to that big event. I still get butterflies, and I'm not jaded at all when it comes to live shows. Like I love when the lights go down and the stage lights come up and the people, I don't know, I just can read it on people's faces. They save up money to go to the special event.
I call it my tour allowance. I had a special envelope to put money in to save up for concert tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth it. It's like, there's a cathartic thing about it. So yeah.
But was music on in the house?
No. Well, my dad listened to country. Country western was like what I grew up listening to with him. So it's a big part of my growing up. I was thinking about it yesterday, Memorial Day. It was like, I would go with him to the VFW hall on a lot of weekends, especially as a young kid. And basically what it was him to go drink at the bar with the three classes of veterans, right? They're the World War II guys, the old schoolers, which is the Korean conflict, guys, and then the young whippersnappers, the Vietnam guys. And so I'd be just sitting there playing pool with all of them. And that's like how I grew up, part of how I grew up, and the other part was being at home, hopefully playing football out at the school field with my friends and playing hockey. But
it's unbelievable to me how many musicians and people that work in the music industry come from veteran families.
Yeah.
It's that have veteran dads specifically. It's unbelievable. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I grew up in a military family and I'm married to an active duty Marine. So it's something that just is always around,
Right. Yeah. No, it was a big part of, it wasn't a big deal. Like I think now, like I have kids and it becomes, I think, a turnoff for some younger kids that's sanctimonious, and they go like, no, if it's just every day and it's normal, like to pay respects to people that are keeping you safe. And that, my God, like you think about, you could go in any direction. Like I considered going in the military because I really did want to travel, but I caught the bug with guitar too much where it went the other way. But it was I'd say there was a 35% chance I was going to do it because I just knew I wasn't going to go to college. And, but I found what I really loved. And I think I could have had a career there too. I'm friends with, people in the military now that, enjoy it. You get to a certain level and it's like anything else. You find your craft and you get passionate about it. And it's not just one stereotype that you become. There's many avenues you can go down.
My husband's been career military, and he's the exact opposite of you. He's been trying to learn how to play the guitar for that entire time. Way more successful with the guitar. Way more successful with the military than he has been with his guitar playing.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what, can keep you going, right? Having something at home ready to go. Like I love cooking. So even if I'm playing music, I really enjoy cooking, unless I have to, unless I'm like onto a song and then I have to go, oh man, I got to go cook dinner for the family. I love doing it, but man, I don't want to break right now. So
When I have a theory about music that you kind of grow up being gifted this music, like you talked about the country music from your dad, because it's just around and you're exposed to it. And then there's an artist or an album or a song, and you as your own person make the decision and say, well, that's what I like. That's mine. So where did your love of rock music come from? What was it?
It was really alternative rock. Like I said, the things I grew up around, growing up in the 70s and 80s in New York, New Jersey area, you were getting, mainstream rock radio, which was the Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, The Who, and it was fine, but it was just too accessible, I think, and not as special. It still was kind of, Led Zeppelin, I'm a big fan. I was a really big fan. But when I discovered true alternative music in the late 70s, especially the early 80s, was just such a cool time to me that I definitely found my lane. And there wasn't many people that knew about it in my surroundings, but there was a few. This kid Craig Raposa, my next door neighbor Tommy Rogers, they had like these amazing record collections of like the Cure, the second and third Cure record, Faith and 17 Seconds, were when I kind of dipped into that world. And Echo and the Bunnymen were coming online, and Killing Joke and things like that. There was one, I've told this story so many times, but I'll tell it again. My mom's clock radio in her room got a station in Long Island called WLIR, and they played what would become alternative music around the country, whether it was like Depeche Mode and Elvis Costello, Dead Kennedys, or, like just things that weren't on mainstream rock radio. And that's what turned me on. That's what made me go buy records, go search out, go find that culture that, was elusive, just wasn't everywhere. So
I ask all these questions because I got to hear an advanced copy of What Normal Was. And, in the 80s for me, I got into the hair metal and the heavy metal stuff like the Priest and the Maiden, the Bon Jovis of all of that stuff, the Def Leppards, all that. But there was this vein in me that loved that kind of goth rock, that melodic Depeche Mode, Cure, Duran Duran, like that I just, it speaks to my bone marrow. And when I listened to your new album, I was like, oh, he gets me. It's like
awesome.
A warm blanket. It makes me so happy.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, this record really is a reflection back to that time, right? It's like this little musical diary of inspiration from like early 80s, 81, 84, 85. It goes past that, obviously, but there's such good songs back there. But there was that interesting time of hybrid of bringing synths into, I wouldn't call it heavy music, because there's a part of me that obviously likes really heavy music. And it's part of what I brought to, the table of Perfect Circle. Like I loved Randy Rhoads. The first two Ozzy records were what I really flipped out on with, I would say, heavier music. And then Alice in Chains after that, which by that time I was out touring with those guys. But when I heard Alice in Chains, all my demos of my music that I've been writing now for, at that time, maybe 4 years, that were very much like this record, maybe even a little bit more like second Cure record, like a little more guitar driven, new wave, I guess. I just love Jerry Cantrell. I tuned my guitar to C sharp and never went back. Once I heard Dirt, or not even Dirt, it was like a facelift still. I just went kind of incorporated that. And that's what Perfect Circle became, like what you're hearing on this record and the heavier elements. But this record is going back to the demos of every song I probably ever written and flushing them out with the, now I know how to make this record and I can afford to make this record because it's cheaper to make this record than it was when we were kids. I wanted a synth when I was a kid, but there's no way I could afford it. I could barely afford I borrowed a guitar from my uncle that he got at Sears and Roebuck for, it was like a plastic guitar. That was my first thing. And then I wound up buying my first $300 guitar. So synth music was a rich kid's sport as far as I understood it. I just didn't know anyone that had access to that. So here's my, this is me, partly why I wanted to call this record or have it come out under my name is this is probably the most authentic thing to me musically that you can get, whether it's how I'm singing or how the music I'm tapping into.
I read something that Maynard actually gave you some advice about following your passion, right?
Well, following his thing was, and it's almost like not a cool thing to admit. And then, when somebody tells you, I told you so. Maynard, I told you so. And he never told you so after the fact. But when I was starting to do Ashes Divide in like 2006 is when I really started that. I would sing, like in my backup parts in Perfect Circle are a lot of times quite high. I'm trying to do the things either he did on the record or I did that were up there. And so I think I just was in that pattern. I was just in that range. So I just kept singing that way with Ashes. And then I look back on it now when after I did this record, I just didn't want to be in a place that was playing that character. I mean, we always play a character when you're doing music. You have something you're kind of putting on a bit. You're not doing a spoken word record, or I'm not speaking like I am now, but Maynard's advice back then was, you've got a great speaking voice. Why don't you use that when you're singing? And so at first I was like, what? I honestly was a bit like, what? I didn't really get it. And now, whether it's exactly what he meant or not, that's what I did on this record. I think it's more, I have kids and I've showed them Ashes and I've showed them this. They can't recognize it's me from the Ashes record when I'm singing, but you can hear it's me speaking if you hear this record. So take that for what it's worth.
It comes up a lot on the show, the influence of technology and how it changed music, specifically in the 80s. That's what you're talking about with the synths. But it wasn't just with the keyboards, but, you look at a guy like, Rick Allen from Def Leppard and forced to modify how he plays and to bring in technology. And it totally changed the sound of Def Leppard when they made his drum kit electronic. And the 80s was that real kind of transition decade between the old analog way of doing things and this newfangled technology and these new computer things people started having access to. It changed the sound of a lot of bands.
Yeah. Yeah. And that technology, which was part of what makes me tick, right? Like I love playing music, but I really love the tech part. I liked being a guitar tech. I like working on computers and in the service of other musicians and making music. And back then in that time, I didn't have access. I wish I did. I wish I had that one MIDI guru that I knew. I swear I'd be ruling I probably wouldn't be a musician though. I'd be having a competitor to Roland or something like that. Like I was just so thirsty to get into technology stuff, but I just didn't have access to it. And then it was very hard to make songs. It was very hard to make songs on your own. Everyone's so spoiled with, all of us are spoiled with technology that on your phone, if you have an iPhone, you've got GarageBand for $10 and you can get major damage done on that thing. It's amazing. And what I would have given to have that, like just I record 4 tracks on the computer. I remember even on the Downward Spiral tour in 1994, I got my very first laptop and I just wanted to record 4 tracks at the same time. And now it's unlimited. You can do as many as you want, but it was just the thought of like, I can get these ideas down, but there's something about that hunger and lack of access that will give you, and might make the guitar more special for your husband who doesn't have the ability to do it all day, right? It's like that's what makes it really special.
I started working in radio in 1991, and over COVID, I built my own studio. If you had told me 30 years ago I'd have my own radio studio and my own recording studio, I'd have been like, there's no way. But technology's changed all of the aspects of this industry.
Right. Yeah. But you do, I think I'm saying this as a cautionary tale too, to say, be careful. It's just like music. And I've got kids, so what they listen to, I've had this talk, especially with my older son, about the immediacy of some things and equating it to food. Early we're trying to teach him about my kids about food, like that, why we need food with substance. It's not just because it tastes good or bad. It's just like you need it to function. You need potassium, you need magnesium, you need things that you're getting from your food that if you don't have it, you don't feel good. And then everything else doesn't matter. So if you just eat cotton candy all day, you're going to feel like shit. Yeah, it's great in the first time, but you do. And music's a little like that too. There's immediate pleasure music that eventually you don't feel great listening to it. It's the analogy's there if you are gracious enough to kind of chase it. But I try to think of it that way and go the chasing something that's a little harder to get, like a nutritious meal, or music that might have some depth to it, but it's not on the surface is a shiny object that catches your attention, reaps big benefits. And I think we grew up in a time, right, that we listened to records and you kind of suffered through a lot of records that weren't great, but you got through to some amazing stuff. And you might have got the whole vision that the artist was thinking of in the first place. Because, we've heard it many times. Who knows if the Rolling Stones would have succeeded if they weren't shepherded and given, another chance to make another record or whatever.
If their first single
band.
didn't go viral on TikTok, where would the Stones have gone?
Yeah, exactly. And they're not like going, oh, well, we better drink a gallon of mustard. That way our song's going to take off. I feel bad for all the kids now that just think they have to be, what used to be just shooting heroin in your eyeball to get attention. Now you got to
learn a dance. You got
to be in Jackass.
Yeah.
You got to be a Jackass cover band to make it.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you this question, and I ask every songwriter this question because the answers are always fascinating. And like I said, I am fascinated by the craft of songwriting. So as a songwriter, this is a craft question. Can you give me an example or two of songs from any artist, any genre that are so well crafted that the songwriting is perfect, but explain why?
All right. This is Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode.
Oh, God, I love that song.
And that song hung me up in 2007 when I was making the Ashes record, because, again, back to that record, that record sounded much more like this record I'm doing. Not as kind of flushed out, but much more like it. And as I was writing the record and trying to find the songs, that I usually have a couple, like 2 albums that steer a record for me. First Perfect Circle record was Fiona Apple's title for her first record, and OK Computer by Radiohead.
Interesting.
Those were the 2 records that really I had as measuring sticks for me. And I don't know exactly what it was, but there was something about those records that pushed me along. And you go to the Ashes record, it was that song, but it was Enjoy the Silence. And I go, what's the fucking point of writing anything? This song's been written, and I had that kind of defeated.
It's like listening to Hendrix and going, why do I want to play guitar?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a terrible thing. It's something I talk people out of all the time now because of the whole social media, YouTube sensation phenoms that come out. And, next thing you know, your kid is 10 years old and they go, it's too late for me. This little girl in China is 5 and she can, play Bach and this. I'm not going to touch the piano. I can't do it. It's too late. It's a little of that terrible self-degradation, terribleness that we go through. So I don't know. That song messed me up back then, for sure.
What is it about it that messes you up? Is it the sound of it, the lyrics, the structure, or just all of it?
All of it. It's that lyrics. There's other songs that have hit me harder. I think there's other songs. I was never a lyric guy, honestly, growing up. It was about the atmosphere and the where the song took me. Even though I was a big Elvis Costello fan, like a really big fan when I was growing up, I more took the whole thing in, not just reading the lyrics and discard the rest. Enjoy the Silence. I think the simplicity, something I tried to chase on this record too, which is what's great about Depeche Mode and a lot of bands from that era, Tears for Fears. It wasn't overly, there was space between the instruments. The way that they frequency stacked things allowed you, to me, to turn it up loud without it being fatiguing. Now, like there's some records that I love, but I turn it up and I go, like it hits my ears and it's like shrill. And those records keep turning it up and tell me when it gets shrill. It's just, they're recorded well. So that was one thing for what Normal was that I really wanted, was a record that sounded really good. And Matty Green completely nailed it. And that guy was so patient. He's Canadian. So, what can you say? He's like the nicest guy on earth.
So nice, painfully nice.
Painfully nice. every time I go like, oh man, I know we're done with Cherry. Like I have my working titles. Like, can we just go back? I got one more thing I want to throw to you, but can we tighten up this one? He goes, no problem, man. No problem. He was so nice. And we were in COVID hell still, but still, he's like, he could just tell me, yeah, you hired me to do a mix and we did the mix and it's done. He was just so cool.
Well, you can tell, because that's why I said it's like a warm blanket. Like it kind of hugs you. It wraps itself around you. When I listened to it, I was like, wow.
Thanks. I am really proud of this record. I can still listen to it. Like there's nothing about it that sounds like work for me, which is not always the case,
Well, now you got to figure out how to play it all live.
Yeah. Now that's a whole other thing. I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm not ready. I'm like, the band arrives tomorrow here to my studio, and I am scrambling making keyboard patches because that is the hardest thing. Is like going back to the record and finding the source material. Oh my God, it's not easy. So
well, you better figure it out by July 5th because you're going to be in Boston and I'm going to be at the show.
Oh, by then we'll be old hat. But the first warm-up show is going to be interesting, but it's going to be great. But, it's in that mode of like, I don't know, are we going to pull this off? And you always pull it off, but you always ask that question, like, can we actually do this?
Well, the album comes out June 10th, What Normal Was. Billy, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in July. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'll see you then. Thanks. Nice chatting with you.
There he is, Billy Howerdel. The new album, What Normal Was, comes out this Friday, June 10th, and you can see him at the Brighton Music Hall coming up on July 5th. If you want more information about Billy or me, you can check the links in the show notes of this podcast. While you're there, check out the corresponding playlist. I make a playlist for every full-length episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast, and it's filled with my guest music and all of the other music that we talk about in the interview. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday you get the Sit Rep. The Situation Report is all your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in less than 5 minutes. Plus, you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. If you want details on the Mistress Carrie radio show, Cocktails in the War Room, my weekly streaming video show on Tuesday nights at 8:30 Eastern on Facebook, or if you want to shop in the official Mistress Carrie store, just head to MistressCarrie.com. The new tank tops are in, just in time for summer. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Venture X from Capital One is the travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Progressive is America's #1 motorcycle insurer, so we understand motorcycles. No, really, we have a bike translator.
Okay, so this bike says she is struggling with her place in the motorcycle community. Well, she says she hasn't peaked yet, but she's having a little epiphany, okay? Oh, that maybe life itself is the peak. Interesting. In my experience, I found that... Oh, so I just translate. Not allowed to have opinions. Got it.
Quote with Progressive and see if you could save with America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.